Thankfully, there is more to the world than just technology. So, we are also going to share some not so high tech Canadian inventions to show the diversity and range of Canadian innovation.
And I'm going to start off with something a little close to home here, or at least where I call home now. Uh, while the earliest paper making happened in China somewhere between 25 and 220 AD, the first newsprint, that's paper made from wood pulp that we've seen in all the newspapers over the years, was created in 1838 by Charles Fennerty right here in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Love it. In a lot of ways, newspapers are the most immediate predecessor to social media and the internet, in that they provided often daily news and other updates and a chance for people to really contribute in the conversation through letters to the editor and things like that. Mr. Fennerty, unfortunately for him, neglected to patent this invention, but that has probably been a bit of a boon for the rest of us. So when you think about the look and feel of old school newspapers, remember that newsprint was invented right where you are right now, Jeff, in the Maritimes.
Yay. And speaking of newsprint, it takes me back to catalogs back in the day, which were so popular. And as any pre-internet teenage boy in Canada with a Sears catalog might be pleased to learn, the classic Wonder Bra was invented by Quebec designer Louise Poirier. Now, this wasn't the first modern bra ever, which was patented in 1914, but Wonder Bra's Dreamlift Model 1300, very catchy name, was the world's first push-up bra and therefore an important foundation piece, pun very much intended, in the evolution of lingerie.
Wow, I didn't expect that from you, but I probably should have realized that in terms of the history of the Wonder Bra. Really cool to know. We're going to stray a little bit from the lingerie angle and focus on another female inventor. Canadians have created a lot of inventions for use around the home, and one of these was the Jolly Jumper, a bouncing seat for babies that was popular in the 1950s and 1960s and still today. Its creator, Olivia Poole, was one of the first Indigenous women in Canada to patent an invention, and the Jolly Jumper brand is still based in Canada all these years later, which is so incredible, Jeff. Again, another story that I think Canadians need to know about, especially moms who are familiar with the Jolly Jumper, and that there were female inventors way back then when.
Absolutely, and it's a crazy origin story. It's wonderful to see the Indigenous angle there too. I'm not sure if I've ever had one of those, but I can definitely picture the Jolly Jumper very clearly in my head. And it shows inventions don't always have to be super flashy to be very useful. But speaking of bouncing around, Canadians also invented the first snowmobile, patented in 1937 by Joseph Armand Bombardier in Quebec. Now, strangely enough, the original snowmobile had 7 seats. It was designed for doctors and actually priests and the like living in remote areas to more easily get around, which makes a ton of sense, obviously, in snowy places. But it was also used in World War II before becoming a favorite Canadian winter pastime, which I think I was probably 10 or 12 years old last time I drove one of those way back in our Dunstaffnage days.
All I remember in those Dunstaffnage days is maybe it was Dad who would be yelling because the snowmobiles would be zooming across our property in the country. That would be my memory of that. Before we move on, it's worth mentioning that I think most of us will also recognize the inventor's last name as the founder of Bombardier Inc., which became a famous Canadian aerospace manufacturer and is the top maker of business jets in the world. Of course, again, another incredible Canadian inventor. Now let's take a sharp turn into the world of sports. Jeff, you have a little origin story about this.
I do. There's the cool sort of story in contrast. I remember being on vacation in the United States with my wife and her dad's family, who are from the northeastern United States. They, like a lot of Americans, are pretty sports intense, pretty sports crazy, and you know how sports through school is so different in the US than it is in Canada. I played football when I was 12 on PEI and was defensive captain in Ottawa in high school and even played at McGill. Yet nothing at any of those levels would compare to the enormous scale of football in the States, which might explain their surprise. So I was talking with my wife's cousins and they couldn't believe it. And they looked up to make sure that Canadians invented not only hockey and lacrosse, but also basketball, which a lot of us might know from James Naismith in 1891 from the Canadian Heritage Mint. That was very popular on that. Plus, the very first modern football game was played in 1874 between Harvard and McGill University. So, yay for Canadian sports innovations, too.
Very cool. And speaking of hockey, ice hockey was invented in the 1800s. The goalie mask wasn't invented, however, until 1960 by someone who had a vested interest, professional hockey goaltender and Canadian Jacques Plante. And in another hockey-related invention that spread everywhere in televised sports, Canadian George Retzlaff invented the instant replay in 1955, which was first used during CBC's Hockey Night in Canada. So a lot of hockey inventions and innovations.
Yeah, and just to get a closing remark about hockey in, even though the Americans are catching up with us, roughly 41% of current NHL players are Canadian, with only around 29% being American these days. A decade ago, it was basically half Canadians, and in the 1980s, when I was growing up, it was more than 75% Canadians. So, for comparison, the third most common player nationality now in the NHL is the Swedes at a bit over 9% of the players. So, it's certainly an area where we can still say we comfortably dominate.
Sure do. Now, in another not quite technology, but life-changing invention, the world owes its time zones to Canadian Sir Sanford Fleming, who's the father of International Standard Time, which he convinced North American railways to adopt in 1883 and then helped spread around the world.
Yeah, and strangely enough, there are, I guess maybe not that strangely, but there are a few Canadian railway related inventions, including the railway car brake and the rotary railroad snowplow. I think I even read something about the first air conditioned railroad car and some other ones like that while I was doing some research. So that's fascinating, but while not directly related to transportation, the square-headed and generally superior Robertson screw was, of course, invented by Canadian Peter Robertson in 1908 and was admired and used by none other than Henry Ford in his Model T car production in Canada.
Oh my goodness, I am learning so much along the way. I feel like I should have known some of these things. Here's one that you will be interested in, Jeff. I know you're a musician, and probably lots of people who are listening perhaps are musicians as well. The world's first electric organ was patented in 1928 by Canadian Morse Robb of Belleville, Ontario.
Yeah, that's also cool. And I got to wonder if that's all also tied into hockey too, given how popular the organ was at hockey games. But who knows? And we could go on for a long time outlining the extraordinary number of Canadian inventions. But I think we'll leave it at that for now. Let us know on social media if there are any great Canadian inventions you think we should have included, and we'd love to hear more from you on that.
And we'll be back a little bit later in the show with 5 Canadian tech tools that we have used over the years in our businesses, as well as some listener voicemails on some of the great Canadian tech that they're using or have used over the past few years, too.